in Indian Wells. Look at this. I mean, this was in Australia. Court 6 literally had a line. I know I'm exaggerating, but it went for miles at the Aussie. It was wild scenes there. Allie, can you remember a women's star who gets this type of support wherever she goes?
Yeah, well, Taylor Swift. I mean...
This 21-year-old tennis player from the Philippines is pulling off something that top-ranked champions and Grand Slam winners seemingly can't match. She's packing arenas, crashing websites, and creating headaches for event organizers trying to manage massive crowds. Industry insiders are openly debating whether she's become the most magnetic personality in women's tennis. Not the most skilled, but the most captivating. These are completely separate discussions. What's your take on Alex Ayala? Has she already claimed the title of most compelling figure in women's tennis? Ranking aside, share your thoughts below because I'm really interested in hearing different perspectives on this.
No, I'd have to say maybe a little bit of Sonia Mirza. Back in her heyday, obviously the Indian fans took to her and they followed her all around the globe. Obviously not to this extent, and I think the ceiling that Alex Ayala has is obviously that much higher. And I'm going to bring in a little boxing here because my dad wanted me to be a boxer, but I chose tennis. But Manny Pacquiao.
Good call.
Manny Pacquiao, we saw him when he, was at the top of his game. And alongside Roger Federer, he actually had more prize money. So I think that if Ayala, can keep doing well with her tennis, who knows? The sky's the limit on the court, off the court. I mean, she could be rolling it.
All right, let's dive into a statistic that honestly shouldn't exist. Alex Ayala's pre-tournament media session at the 2026 Australian Open racked up 171,000 views. Novak Djokovic managed 80,000. Arena Sabalenka pulled in 9,000. Take a moment to process that. The current world #1 in women's tennis, a multiple Grand Slam winner who demolishes opponents with a kind of raw power that makes her competition look completely outmatched, attracted 9,000 views to her press conference. Ayala pulled nearly 20 times that number, and tennis insiders aren't even trying to call this normal anymore.
She's got a smile that lights up a room too, And I remember last year when she beat Swiatek, and she kind of did it with a lot of grace and humility, And it was really, for me, it was terrific to see her take that match and watch her play after that, and watch her try to continue to progress. Because I like her game, Obviously. She wants to get better than where she is now, the 32 in the world, but she's got a lot of good hand-eye coordination and ability to take the ball early and redirect. But the fan stuff is always fun for me, because whenever you see players from smaller countries, the fans are so passionate when they get up to the top.
It's interesting, Ali mentioned Sonia Mirza. She has nearly 13 million followers on Instagram. That's 5 million more than Carlos Alcaraz, and nearly as many as Alcaraz and Sabalenka combined. So that's how big Sonia Mirza is, was, and will be. But Ayala going to be seeded for the first time at a 1,000. To find out who she will play in the second round, check out
the draw. So here's how tennis experts are talking about Alex Ayala in 2026. There's nothing cautious about it, nothing measured, none of the typical polite tennis commentary where every player gets described as talented with potential. That conversation is over. Former ATP pros Sam Querrey and Steve Johnson recently discussed something that many people in tennis have been thinking privately. They asked straight up whether Alex Ayala has become the biggest attraction in women's tennis right now. Johnson didn't hesitate. His answer was absolutely not, possibly not. She's heading that direction. Absolutely. That response needs some context, because being the biggest attraction means something very specific. It's not about being the most successful player. It's not about having the highest ranking. It's about who fills seats, who breaks streaming platforms, who makes event organizers worry about handling crowds before the first ball gets hit. And when you frame the question that way, building a case against Ayala in 2026 becomes genuinely challenging. Let's revisit Australia, because that's where this current surge of expert recognition really gained momentum. The atmosphere surrounding Ayala's matches at the Australian Open got described as absolutely chaotic by reporters covering the event. Lines stretching impossibly long, crowds gathering that made no sense based purely on ranking. Here's a player sitting outside the top 30 at that time, creating the kind of pre-match energy that Grand Slam organizers typically see only with seeded players in later rounds. The Filipino support was massive, passionate, and coordinated in a way that felt less like traditional tennis spectating and more like fans showing up for a major concert. Now, passionate national support for players isn't new territory, but the sheer scale of what's happening with EALA is making even seasoned tennis commentators struggle to find proper comparisons. When pressed to name which women's star generates this level of international traveling support, one expert pointed to Sania Mesa, which is actually quite serious territory. Mesa had Indian fans following her tournaments worldwide during her prime, and her Instagram currently sits at nearly 13 million followers, roughly 5 million more than Carlos Alcaraz and almost matching Alcaraz and Sabalenka's combined total. That represents genuine global cultural impact in tennis, and experts are suggesting IA's potential goes even higher. Another person in that discussion brought up Manny Pacquiao, which shows you exactly what kind of reference points are being used. Pacquiao at his peak ranked among the most famous athletes globally. His fights became national holidays in the Philippines. The entire country would reorganize schedules around his matches. At his commercial height, he was reportedly earning in the same ballpark as Roger Federer when combining prize money with endorsements. When tennis analysts start invoking Manny Pacquiao as their closest comparison, the discussion has clearly moved beyond standard territory. And these aren't just enthusiastic fans making these comparisons. These are former professionals and analysts who've spent entire careers observing this sport while trying to maintain objectivity. So, what's actually fueling this phenomenon? The fan devotion doesn't materialize from nothing. And it's not purely emotional. There's a unique combination of elements working with EALA that's creating something the sport hasn't experienced in quite this form before. First, her story carries unusual appeal. EALA trained at the Rafa Nadal Academy. She grew up away from family, honing her skills in Spain within one of tennis's most demanding competitive atmospheres. She progressed through junior rankings, captured junior Grand Slam titles, then faced the grueling challenge of translating junior achievements into professional success on the main tour, which any tennis follower knows is where most junior champions quietly fade away. The transition from junior standout to legitimate WTA contender is ruthless, and most don't survive with their potential intact. IU's not only survived, but did so in a manner that deeply connected with fans who were watching and hoping. When she defeated Aga, who held the world #1 ranking at that time, it was the type of victory that fundamentally shifts how people view a player. Not just because of the opponent she beat, but because of her response afterward. The poise, the calm confidence, the modesty in that moment showed she grasped the significance without needing to manufacture a reaction for cameras. That kind of authenticity creates lasting impressions. It develops the type of fan loyalty that can't be artificially created. Second, the market she represents is massive and largely unexplored by tennis. Southeast Asia stands as one of the fastest expanding sports consumption regions worldwide. Digital adoption, social media participation, and hunger for live sports content throughout the Philippines and neighboring areas represent a commercial opportunity that global sports organizations have been trying to crack for years. EALA doesn't just appeal to that market. She embodies it in a highly visible and personal way. When a Filipino fan watches her compete or travels across continents to see her at a Grand Slam or keeps refreshing streams until they load, something deeper than sports appreciation is happening. It's cultural representation at the elite level of an individual sport. It's witnessing someone who shares your background and origins competing on the world's biggest stages. That emotional connection doesn't depend on rankings. It runs on identity. And in 2020's EXS sports marketing landscape, identity spreads faster than almost anything else. Third, her tennis skills are legitimately strong. This matters because influence without performance has a short shelf life. IA possesses genuine technical ability. Her hand-eye coordination stands out as exceptional. Her capacity to take balls early and redirect them to shift point dynamics before opponents can recover has been highlighted by coaches as a real competitive advantage. It's not just spectacular to watch, it's strategically effective. It creates challenges that higher-ranked players have had trouble solving. She started 2026 with positive momentum, made a strong showing at Dubai, and climbed 16 ranking positions to hit a career-high number 31 by late February. She's entering Indian Wells, one of the tour's premier combined events, with a first-round bye because of that ranking. And she arrives with a 10-6 season record. Numbers that show she's competing consistently, winning matches, and building momentum. This isn't a social media phenomenon about someone popular online, but struggling in competition. Her match results are trending upward, and the timing of that improvement has synchronized with increased public attention in a way that's strengthening both aspects. Now, here's where things get truly fascinating from business and structural perspectives. Tournament directors across the Middle East and Southeast Asia have been openly comparing her audience appeal to Manny Pacquiao. Novak Djokovic, who's experienced everything in tennis and isn't easily impressed, has called the excitement around her a positive challenge for the sport. When Djokovic characterizes your fan base as a positive challenge for tennis, you've moved into an entirely different athlete category. The crowd patterns are already creating operational challenges. Attendance for her matches that surpasses what venue infrastructure anticipated. Organizers handling situations they didn't plan for because a player ranked outside the top 30 is generating demand that belongs in a higher tier. Indian Wells comes next, and people tracking these developments expect Filipino fan support to arrive in significant numbers. The comparison that keeps surfacing, and it's worth considering, seriously relates to what Simaira meant for Indian tennis internationally. Mesa established a blueprint for how a player from a non-traditional tennis market could develop a following that transcended borders and extended beyond their active career. Her 13 million Instagram followers exist not because she was her generation's best player, but because she represented something larger than tennis to a huge and devoted community. She became a cultural icon who competed at tennis's highest level. Analysts are now suggesting EALA's potential in that dimension goes higher, not tentatively or with major caveats, but definitively higher. And current metrics support that assessment. A press conference drawing 171,000 views compared to Djokovic's 80,000 isn't coincidence. That's an audience making a clear statement about who they want to see. There's also the social media reality to consider, because that's where younger audiences, the demographic that will shape sports commerce for the next 20 years, decide who to follow. ISA belongs to the generation that grew up in this environment. Short-form video content, instant engagement, behind-the-scenes access, the kind of platform presence that transforms a sports moment into shareable cultural content. Her victories spread rapidly. Her personality shines through in interviews in ways that work well on screen. She has, as one analyst noted, with complete seriousness, a smile that brightens any room, which might sound like casual praise, but in modern sports media's attention economy, warmth and charisma aren't minor qualities. They determine whether viral moments happen or content gets forgotten. Coco Gauff created the recent template for what a young women's player with genuine mainstream crossover potential looks like. The commercial possibilities, the cultural visibility, the ability to connect with audiences who don't typically watch tennis. EALA, according to multiple analysts monitoring the situation in real time, is already generating comparable attention in certain markets and exceeding Gauff in direct engagement numbers within Southeast Asia. That's a meaningful observation. The ranking difference between them is substantial. Gauff holds Grand Slam titles and top 10 status, but the viewership explosion around EALA isn't following the pattern of a 31st ranked player. It's behaving like something much bigger, and tennis leadership is beginning to acknowledge that the traditional equation of rankings equaling influence isn't completely applicable in her situation. What does this suggest for EALA's future path? The trajectory looks genuinely thrilling, and experts recognize it. She's 21 years old. She's climbing rankings precisely when her cultural presence is taking off. A player's physical and technical development at 21 still has tremendous growth potential. If match results keep improving, more deep tournament runs, additional victories over top 10 opponents, the consistency that moves a ranking from 31 to 15 or 10. The combination of performance and influence would create something women's tennis hasn't quite witnessed before. Not just an excellent player with international supporters, but an athlete functioning as a cultural force backed by one of the world's most passionate sporting nations, competing at the highest level in an individual sport. With global broadcast distribution, the potential ceiling, as experts keep emphasizing, reaches very high. And currently, in early 2026, even the foundation is already impressive enough to make tournament directors adjust their planning and former champions search for boxing analogies just to find adequate descriptions. This isn't a development any serious tennis observer predicted 2 years ago. Yet, it's absolutely the reality they're examining now. EALA has evolved beyond just a tennis narrative. She represents a viewership phenomenon, a cultural movement, and apparently a crowd control challenge, which happens to be the ideal type of challenge to face. If you're interested in more detailed analysis like this covering the players who are genuinely changing tennis dynamics right now, hit that like button and subscribe. Much more content is coming your